You may begin, Jay. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Linda. I guess I will introduce myself first. My name is Jay Posner. I'm the Supervisor of Development Services. I welcome you to the open house for planning files S 2020-001, L 2020-009, and Z 2020-014. Those are respectively for official plan amendments, subdivisions, and zoning bylaw amendment for the lands at the west end of Market Street, commonly understood by, I imagine, everybody that's attending. At the purpose of the open house, I should stop right there. We are being recorded. Information that's presented at the open house and by the proponent and by those participating will be recorded and preserved on file in the record. It will be provided to council so they can be informed of for when they make a decision on these applications. But I wanted to make sure that was clear, and I'd forgotten that in my notes. So the purpose of the open house is an opportunity for members of the public to learn about the proposal. And it's also an opportunity for them to ask questions, identify some concerns, and if it's straightforward enough that can be addressed at the open house, to be provided the answers. There is a limited time. It is 90 minutes only. The open house will end at 6:30. And so that means everybody that's wanting to participate, we should be giving them a fair opportunity to provide their input. So I ask everybody to be concise and get to the point. I don't mean to impose that on people, but I just feel the need to say it. The outline of the agenda is that the developer will outline their proposal, and they'll outline it briefly, but we've asked them to align it as best they can to help address the comments and questions we've received to date. So it can be as precise and informative as they can be. And I think you've been advised by Linda and the clerk's department that you've been given, this is for the attendees, you've been each given a number, and it represents generally the order in which you'll be called on to participate. As it approaches your time to provide input, we'll bring you over to the meeting and then you can speak at that time. I do want to introduce Dan Kingsbury. He's the planner responsible for the files, and that all questions, comments should be directed to him. Apart from this open house, but written and otherwise through the process, he will be responsible for managing the file and making sure a comprehensive recommendation is provided to council. After Dan introduces himself and what his role is, I'll turn it over to the proponent and they can introduce themselves and go from there. So go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Jay. As mentioned, I'm Dan Kingsbury. I'm a senior planner with the County of Bruce Planning Department. The County of Bruce processes Planning Act applications on behalf of the town. And so, as Jay mentioned, there's a plan of subdivision, local official plan amendment, and zoning bylaw amendment proposed, and they're being processed concurrently. So this is the open house where you folks can ask some questions. And then on Tuesday, next Tuesday, we'll have a statutory public meeting for town council. And that will be an opportunity for you to speak directly to council and voice any concerns or questions you have council. Subsequent to public meeting, we will take some time to digest all the comments and received, and we'll report back to town council at a later date with a recommendation. And so from there, it really is contingent on how town council decides to move. If they decide to endorse the project, two of the application types, the plan of subdivision and the local official plan amendment, are actually under the approval authority of county council. So that would be the next step in the process if it's endorsed by town council. And then the zoning bylaw is approved by town council. It's contingent on the local official plan amendment being in place. So hopefully that provides a bit of an overview of the process and how how this evening and next Tuesday evening sort of fit into the process. As Jade mentioned, if you have any written questions or comments, they're to be directed to myself and through our Lakeshore Hub Planning inbox. And that email address is bcplpe@brucecounty.on.ca. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jay. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. And I guess at this point, without further ado, I turn it over to Ron Davidson. He will lead the proponents' proposal, or at least an outline of the proposal. I will be sharing my screen. So if there are any problems related to that technology, that is my fault. That's not a joke, but I want to make sure everyone's aware that this is not the fault of anyone but me if it goes sideways. Let me know, Ron, when I need to share something and what to share.
Okay. All right. Thank you. My name is Ron Davidson, as it says on the screen. I am a planning consultant, a registered professional planner by trade, and I represent the owners of the property. They call themselves 15 Market Street Corporation. Also on the line with me representing the ownership are Randy Von Haking and Brett Nodwell. In addition to that, we have our civil engineer, John Slocum. John is one of the senior partners with GM Blue Plan Engineering. And furthermore, we have on the line John Morton. John is a wildlife expert who prepared the environmental impact study. And I guess I can say he had a big role in the designing of the subdivision, because a lot of the subdivision was designed around some of his comments. So I'm going to provide a quick review of the proposed developments, and then you'll be able to ask questions. Now, myself, along with Randy, Brett, John, and John, will attempt to answer your questions tonight. But if there are some questions that we need to look into maybe a little bit further before responding, then we'll have to get back to you, and we'll try to have those answers for you next week when we're in front of town council. So if your comments are more of an opinion and less of a question, then we likely won't respond unless we need to clarify something that was stated and we feel maybe was not correct. We don't have any intentions of getting into a debate with anybody tonight. We'll try to answer our questions your questions as best as we can. Now, just before I continue, I will state that, and I think Dan touched upon this a little bit. This is not a public meeting as required under the Planning Act. This is, I guess, above and beyond, if you will, what's required. This is just an informal meeting. It's not necessary in terms of what the Planning Act tells us what we need to do in order to hear applications. But so it's more of an informal meeting. It was recommended by county staff and town staff to us as an opportunity to meet with the neighbors in advance of next week's public meeting to introduce the project and try to answer some of the questions. So that's why we're doing this. So to start off, I'll just jump right into this, I guess. I know everybody knows where the property is located. It's a property that comprises 4.2 hectares of land, and it has frontage along Market Street, and then in 2 locations along Getty Street. And as you're quite aware, the site is predominantly forested. Now, there is a pedestrian path that cuts through the site. It starts in the southwest corner of the property near the intersection of Market and Geddes, and it heads in a northeasterly direction towards North Nodwell Park. To be clear, though, that existing path, it's not a town-owned path. It's owned by the developer. It is private property. But you'll hear me say in a few minutes, though, that path will become public property if this development gets approved. So what is the development? I'm hoping everybody that's listening has had a chance to go on the county website and take a look at the various documents that were prepared. There's one called a draft plan. That's, I guess, a fancy word for a drawing that shows the proposed development. Draft plan of subdivision, I guess, is the correct term. What that is proposing is specifically 12 single-family lots, and you can see them on the screen. Thank you, Jay. You'll see 5 along Getty Street and another 7 along Market Street. So there'll be those 12 lots will be created along existing roads. And then on the property, there'll be 2 blocks, is the term, just another word for a large lot, if you will. Those apartment blocks will have 4 apartment buildings on them for a total of, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. There'll be apartment units within those buildings. They will not be rentals. They will be condominium units. So in the town, the applicant or the developer is hoping to introduce affordable housing in the form of apartments to the town. And that's something that the town, I've heard on many occasions, staff and council say they badly need, and I'll get into that in just a minute. So in addition to those 2 blocks for townhouses, or for apartments, and the 12 single family dwellings, there will be a large block shown as block 13, which will be established as an open space block. And that will include the trail, a lot of forested land, and that will be given to the town. Almost all of that block 13, the trees on it, almost all of them will be maintained. And the existing walking trail, again, will remain. It will meander a little bit, and that's shown on a different drawing. But it will connect from the southwest corner of the property to Nodwell Park in the northeast corner. Because of the way this design is designed now, there will be no new municipal roads proposed. Access to the apartment buildings will be from driveways. So I said 4, I meant to say 3. There are 3 apartment buildings will be erected. 2 will be on block 15, as you can see. And I'm sorry, I'm getting it mixed. I'm getting my things mixed up here. There will be 3 buildings on block 15 and 1 on block 14. There'll be a total of 150 apartments, and there'll be a good mix of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units. The developer intends to design 50% of the units as accessible. So for people that don't get around as well, they'll have an opportunity to buy some of the units or a unit. An important component of this development is, in fact, the preservation of the trees. About 33% of the existing tree vegetation, or 1/3 of the site, will remain forested. Now, just backing up a bit, as you know, this project has been in the works for quite a while. This actually represents the 3rd proposal by the developer over the last 3 or 4 years. Previous versions of the development proposal involved an internal road. That would have been a public road that would have been owned by the town, and a larger number of residential lots and a smaller amount of open space areas. Now, neither of the 2 previous submissions had advanced to the public meeting stage, as you're well aware. Town staff and the county planning department had been extensively involved in those discussions with the developer and the team of consultants. But the application never really got too far. During the most recent discussions with the town and the county, the applicant was advised, the developer and his team, us, were advised to give serious consideration to preserving a greater number of trees and conveying more land to Saugeen Shores for open space purposes. So in that regard, the developer followed that advice and instructed the engineer and the wildlife expert to redesign the proposed subdivision accordingly. And that redesigned subdivision is what you have in front of you tonight. Prior to filing any applications, we had pre-consultation meetings with the town, the county, and the Conservation Authority. And they advised us of a series of studies that had to be submitted as part of our application submission to the county. And those, again, those reports were filed quite a while ago. And some of them were updated recently with this new submission. But they included an environmental site assessment, both phase 1 and 2, a soil remediation report, an environmental impact study, stormwater management report, a functional servicing report, an archaeological assessment, and then the planning report. So just quickly here, the environmental site assessments, not to be confused with an environmental impact study. An environmental site assessment looks at possible contamination. And they were conducted, these assessments were conducted because of the historical use of the subject property, if you go back many years ago. And that assessment conducted for the lands recommended that some soil remediation occur on a small portion of the site. That remediation did occur, I believe, quite a while ago. And such remediation did occur. And then again, following which there was another report done called the soil remediation report, and it confirmed that the soil conditions were now within acceptable limits. So the environmental impact study, which is a completely different item, that was prepared by, again, John Morton, who's on the line tonight. And that was to take a look at all the natural heritage features, birds and the bees, if you will, that exist on the site and within 120 meters of the property. And the intent of an environmental impact study is to make sure that any development that does occur, or any site alteration that does occur on the site, is done so in such a manner that it would not negatively impact any natural heritage features on the property. So John Morton, his report provided a series of recommendations that would allow for development on the property, but subject to, again, a list of things that must be adhered to. And John was involved in the preparation of the tree preservation plan along with the engineer. He played a significant role in that. The functional servicing report is something that the engineer had prepared, John Slocum. It explains the manner in which municipal water and sanitary sewers will be provided throughout the development. His office, John's office, also prepared the conceptual stormwater management report, which provides details pertaining to on-site and off-site handling of water. There was an archaeological assessment carried out quite a while ago that included test pitting, and there was no items of significance, of cultural significance, found on the site, and the consultant recommended no further field work be conducted. That report was registered with the province, and the province has acknowledged that. Now, copies of all of these reports, including my planning report and all the drawings, have been filed with the County of Bruce, and they are available for online public viewing. And I would suggest that if you haven't had a chance to look at them yet, do so. There's a lot of information in there. A lot of work has gone into this. And it's I think you'll find them informative. With regard to servicing, of course, there's going to be water and sewer provided to the site. Any cost associated with developing the lands will, of course, be at the cost of the developer, not at the expense of ratepayers. With regard to stormwater, as I said, that's something that the engineer looked at. Stormwater from the detached lots will be directed to the existing storm sewers on the existing roads. And then the apartment buildings on blocks 14 and 15, water that's going to be handled or accommodated from that development, the details will be worked out at the site plan approval stage later on. So just moving on here, and I can promise you my presentation is only going to probably last another 5 or 6 minutes. Try not to bore anybody. When we're looking at development in Ontario, and specifically in this case in Port Elgin, we have to take a look at what the official plan has to say, as well as the provincial policy statement. So in this case, in Saugeen Shores, we have the County of Bruce official plan, which provides some sort of upper tier policies, if you will, with regard to guiding development. And then there's the Saugeen Shores official plan, which has some more specific details for this property. And I wrote somewhat of a lengthy planning report, which addresses the provincial policy statement in both of these official plans, but I'm not going to go into any great detail tonight about how development conforms to these documents and how it's consistent with the provincial policy statement. But I will say this, in the official plan for the town, the lands are designated residential. There's a variety of housing types that are permitted. Thanks, Jay. That the brown area is residential in the official plan. A variety of housing types are permitted, including like a whole variety of detached dwellings, semis, townhouses, and apartment buildings. The town's official plan states that the town will target a minimum of 30% of new housing units to be in the form of medium and high density, multiple unit development. The county's official plan encourages the lower tier municipalities to require 30% of the new housing to be affordable. And I don't think anybody knows more about the need for affordable housing than anybody looking for it in Saugeen Shores and council and staff as well, because I've heard that comment a lot in the last couple of years. So with regard to affordable housing, in the apartment buildings, that's probably the best opportunity to provide affordable housing pretty much in any municipality, because the cost of providing it isn't nearly as high. There will be 50 one-bedroom units, which when we wrote this report a few months ago, the units were thought they would try to sell them for $295,000, which does fall within the definition of affordable in Bruce County. And these units will represent about 31% of the total number of dwellings that are going to be constructed within this development. Now, the developer has also advised that another 20% of the dwellings of the apartments will be what they call attainable. That just means they wouldn't fall into the definition of affordable, but it would be darn close. And there's no, like I said, there's no real definition of what attainable is, but it is something that the town needs. Now, I should point out that the subject lands are considered by the Conservation Authority to be significant woodland. The provincial policy statement provides policies in Ontario for development within and adjacent to woodlands. And the provincial policy statement does allow for development and site alteration to occur in a significant woodland, provided that it can be demonstrated through an environmental impact study that the woodland feature its function would not be negatively impacted. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that trees can't be removed. That's not that's a common misconception, but that's not what the provincial policy statement says. So on that note, John Morton, again, who's with us tonight, he prepared the environmental impact study, and he came up with a series of recommendations that have been incorporated into the draft plan of subdivision drawing and the tree preservation drawing and the conceptual development plan. And all of his recommendations will be implemented through a subdivision agreement. That subdivision is registered on title. It's a legally binding document, and development has to occur in accordance with that site plan agreement. Now, the town's official plan, if you've been reading any of the documents, or I guess the planning report and the environmental impact study, you'll see that the town's official plan handles significant woodlands kind of on a piecemeal basis. Right now, the official plan contains 3 sets of policies for significant woodlands for 3 different areas of town. The first set of policies pertain to the significant woodlands that are identified specifically on Schedule 8 of the official plan, and they call that a Special Policy Area 4. And these lands are generally that area west of the glacial Lake Nipissing Bluff, south of South Street in the town of Southampton, and north of Lot 19 in the former township of Saugeen. Now, in that Special Policy Area 4, development may be considered in that area provided, of course, that the development would not negatively impact the woodland feature or its function. So in that case, an environmental impact study has to be done. Now, there's a second set of significant woodland policies that are identified separately. And those are the lands north of the Saugeen River in the former town of Southampton. And those lands actually show up now as not as Structure Policy Area 4, but significant woodland in the town's mapping. Now, this development used to be prohibited north of the river, but then when the town put water and sewer north of the river, they decided that it would be in the town's best interest to allow for development to occur. So they changed the policies to allow for development in that area, provided once again that that it can be demonstrated that the development would not negatively impact the woodland feature or its function. So that leads us to the third set of woodland policies, and those areas aren't mapped. The official plan just states that other areas of land in Saugeen Shores that are 4 hectares or greater in size of woodland or wooded areas shall be considered to be a significant woodland, and development is not permitted regardless of whether or not an environmental impact study can demonstrate that the development would not impact that feature. Again, that same policy used to apply north of the river, but it no longer does. So long story short, we have 3 different sets of policies for 3 different areas, and there's really no, I can say this, there's really no rhyme or reason as to why they're handled differently. So this proposal on the subject that's proposed for the subject property, again, the lands are designated residential. They don't show up as a significant woodland on any mapping, but because they can constitute part of a larger wooded area, they are considered to be significant woodland. So on that note, this development requires an official plan amendment if it's going to proceed. In our planning report and in the environmental impact study, there's a more lengthier explanation as to why we feel this is a reasonable approach. So again, John Morton has prepared the environmental impact study and has prepared a series of recommendations, and those recommendations again have been incorporated into the drawings, and all of these drawings will be implemented through a subdivision agreement. So that information is looked at very closely by various parties, but the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority is the group that has, I guess, the most expertise, and their job is to peer review certain reports. And in this particular case, 2 reports: 1, the environmental impact study, and 2, the stormwater management report. That's their role, and they serve as peer reviewers, if you will, for the town and the county. And the Conservation Authority has reviewed this proposal, and they have gotten back to the county with their comments, and they have no objections to the proposed development, subject to certain conditions being put in the approval, or what they call draft approval. I don't think I'm going to say anything more about the official plan, the provincial policy statement. I'll maybe save those comments for the public meeting next week. And certainly Dan Kingsbury, your planner, as you heard him say, the town's planner, will be providing a more thorough evaluation from his own perspective after next week's meeting. That's what he'll be tasked with doing. Just briefly here about the buildings that are proposed. There's 4 of them. They will be pushed back as far as possible from the property boundaries. There's a lot of thought giving into how to try to make this work and try to fit in as best as possible with the neighborhood. The buildings will comply with the maximum building height requirement of 12 meters. I should advise that if it was a detached dwelling, they would be 10 meters. So that these aren't a whole lot larger in terms of height, but yes, no doubt about it. With their mass, it's a wider structure, and I wouldn't suggest that otherwise to anybody. Now, the tree preservation that's proposed will provide significant screening of these buildings, which is good. The proposed building for block 14, which is closest to Market Street, it will be turned sideways so that the shortest wall of the building will face the road. And there will be attempts for tree preservation between that building and Market Street, but there'll also be new tree planting once the building has been put up. That's it for my presentation. Hopefully I didn't put anybody to sleep. Hopefully I answered some questions. The other guys on the line with me are not going to present anything per se, but if you have questions, they're here to try to answer them. And thank you for listening to me.
Okay, we'll move right along to having those questions or comments provided. So the first on my list is Don Devitt. And Don has the floor. He will be reminded to unmute himself and turn his camera on if he's comfortable. And if not, he's certainly welcome to, when he unmutes, provide his comments or questions. And we've got about an hour left. Maybe Linda can help us guide too, because I'm not exactly sure what to ask.
No, thanks, Jay. And I do want to make a comment that our first two speakers had withdrawn. Now we have our third speaker withdrawn. So we're actually going to start with speaker number 4, and that is Don. And I see him has joined the meeting, and we just need his camera. There he is. Yeah. So Don, please go ahead.
Thanks for the presentation. I guess my main things I have to say here are I'm not happy with going from an R1 and 2 to up to R4 plus. It's not compatible with the area. This high density project should be near commercial, the commercial core of the city. It's not in the character of the area, and I'm sorry to say it's not going to be low cost housing. You know what's happened in the last couple of years. Almost everything's $1 million these days. This property is near, right, a block from the beach, next to a park, right next to the marina. It's a forested area. It's right on the walking and biking trail. It's going to be very, very expensive. There won't be any affordable housing here or low cost housing here whatsoever if they build it the way they want to do it. As far as the significant woodlands goes, we hate to see that go. It's the biggest area in Port Elgin, and I think there'll be lots of future discussion about that. We're not in agreement with taking all these trees down. Okay, and then the other issues I have, just a number of quick issues. Forest concerns, of course, is one. The environmental carbon capture is a big problem because, of course, we're going to lose an extreme amount of that for Port Elgin. The density on traffic is going to be a huge problem with that huge increase. And of course, Getty Street and at the corner of Market Street is not very, very good for traffic. They can't do much there. I don't know what they could do. And also the habitation, animal habitation is quite, I got a list of about a dozen animals. I'm backed right onto this property. So I've got about a dozen animals that have coming through my backyard. So that's quite a problem. We'd lose a lot of those, that habitat. And water diversion also is a big problem. Putting a stream like that, which some people have said has some fish spawning in it, could be definitely putting it in a big pipe is not acceptable, I think. And also, here's another problem that people don't think about. The economy is probably about to tank because our famous politicians have bankrupted the company or the country. So I think the economy tanking could also put a problem with this development. And what else? Crime increase is also a big problem with this huge development. And privacy, of course, would be gone for us. I'm back right on there. We're an R1 estates area, and so of course this development is way too big for what it should be. My question would be: can you put just housing units in there. I actually looked at the map, and I could fit about 50 private single-family lots in there instead of 12, which would be much more better for the. There wouldn't be any high 40-foot buildings in your face, and the developer would still make pretty good profit with that. Even if it's from 20 to 50 units could be put in there. So that's all I have to say. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And I'm reminded that unless this is recorded, I get reminded that this is recorded, council will hear this. We'll have an opportunity to review this. So thank you for your comment. I guess Ron, if he wants, he can provide an answer, or if he's, I guess by him not coming over, I assume he'll provide an answer at the meeting on Monday or throughout the process. Our next person providing comment is Bob Harrison. Let's give Ron a second if he wants to come back to answer. Thank you, Don.
Yeah, Jay. Yeah, I think stuff like that. I'm taking notes here. That's why I turned my volume off so you don't hear me clicking. I think that'll be part of a presentation next week. I mean, there's a couple of points in there that's certainly, you know, I think people read the planning report, they get a understanding that there's a like it or not, there's a density, a minimum density that has to be achieved when you do development, and it can't be achieved by simply putting in single family dwellings. But I think we'll probably elaborate more on that next week, Jay. Okay,
I just want to make sure everyone listening is comfortable and understands that their questions and comments will be answered, if not tonight, before a decision is made. Okay. Linda has advised Bob Harrison is next. So if you can turn your camera on and unmute, or if you're only comfortable unmuting, you can do that and provide your comments or questions.
Hello.
Yes, we hear you, Mr. Harrison.
I'm there. Okay. Okay. I have a few of the same thing as your previous one, but I'm just going to read out what I wrote today. And
okay.
We'll just take it from there. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak on this very important subject. This property is the last untouched piece of land in Port Elgin. It is enjoyed by hundreds of people every day to see the wildlife and walk their dogs and children through it. It is also a significant filter for groundwater as it goes to the lake. To cover this land with apartments and parking lots, we will be losing this natural filter. This bush is also home to a great variety of animals and birds. I lived here for 32 years and have seen everything from deer. There's bears come through every now and then. I've got turkeys in the yard. Right now I've got pileated woodpeckers that are eating the ants that are in the cedar trees. And I have fox that come every day. It seems to me that the wildlife use of this land below the bridge to travel through the town undetected, so they back up here a little bit. The wildlife uses this land below the ridge to travel through town undetected. Should you allow this high density building proposal with its parking lots and fences, it would block this important corridor for wildlife. The Parks and Trails Committee was told 20 years ago that all the environmental hazard land will be kept as such. This developer wants to downsize the EH land on that property. It looks like they have downsized their project a little for now, showing lots 1 to 12 being developed. But rezoning for sections like 13, 14, and 15 would be included and thus allowed for further development without consultation. Is this true? Can they add more housing to this land later? Our town forefathers laid out a master plan that we have followed in most areas of the town. Why should we change this plan that has been in effect for years to accommodate this one developer? I do believe that our mayor, Mr. Charbonneau, stated that high density housing should be uptown and low density housing by the water. This plan is the exact opposite. This plan will bring a large amount of traffic to an already busy Market Street. The 162 new houses or apartments will each have 1 to 2 cars. That will be over 200 more cars per day. Market Street has the easiest grade to get up the hill, and is therefore used by probably 90% of the people hauling boats down to the harbor, etc. in the summertime. It is also a preferred route for the Saugeen Track Club, which uses it almost every day, not to mention the foot traffic in the summer. It is my belief that this development with all its cars will be a significant safety hazard. I would like to address the change in the building code that will be required by the developer. I've been in the building business for over 30 years and I've applied for several minor variances over the years. I've always been hard to get even a couple of feet added to a house. But these are the rules in the master plan, which was first set following many years previous. Town councilors and building department, this development is asking the town to change our master plan for them. They need to change every yard set, side yards, backyards, height requirements in order to jam these buildings in. If council lets this development go through, it will be forever altering the look of our town. The 4 stories with the roof vents on the roof units on the apartments will be very visible from the beach and take away from the existing view of the natural forest from our lakefront and harbor. This is one of the last significant woodland that we have. However, it is zoned R1 residential and has been since I moved here 32 years ago. If they must build on it, let's keep it as it is in the master plan, R1 residential. Most of you making these decisions have been voted in by our voting to your session. Some have been hired to look after the best interest of our community. This development does not, in my opinion, look after the best interest in our community and should be turned down. It is a safety and environmental issue and should not be passed. That's my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I think the next on the list, I was reminded by Linda that we're actually at number 6 is Marcel Legault. Oh, sorry, Ron, if you had a brief comment. I'm just trying to make sure we have a number of people still to come and, 45 minutes remain. So
I'll say this very quickly, Jay, just to be clear, we're not adjusting the building code whatsoever. And actually, we're not breaking any of the zoning provisions. The development on the property will conform. We're not asking for relief from side yard, rear yard, or lot coverage.
okay, we'll make note of that, and we'll confirm for
Well,
our
except,
report.
I'm sorry. Let me refer. The one apartment block has a reduced lot frontage, but that I'm sorry. I will explain that in greater detail next week.
Thank you. Okay, Marcel.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for doing this, Ron, Jay, and Daniel. I know it's not a requirement to do this, so I appreciate you reaching out to the neighbors to get their opinions. My wife and I, Debbie, live at 172 Lord Elgin, which is known as Lot 36. It backs directly onto the proposed development. And, I was excited to hear Mayor Charbonneau last Thursday talk about affordable housing when he presented to our local Rotary Club, and the commitment that the town has made to look at options and work with developers to bring affordable housing to this community. We also own the Harvey Swiss Chalet in town, and that's it's been a couple of challenging years with COVID. And our biggest challenge so far has been to bring staffing back to the restaurant. And we've worked with a company out of Toronto to bring in immigrants to actually move to the area. And we have candidates that are willing to relocate to this area, but their biggest struggle is trying to find an apartment to rent that they can afford in order to work in this industry. And I don't think I'm alone as far as a small business owner. as far as dealing with some of these issues. So I was excited to hear that this proposed development had an affordable housing portion to it. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to do anything for the 30% of the people out there that are making less than $30,000 a year. There's no way they're going to be able to afford a $295,000 condo, one-bedroom condo, and I'm sure the price is going to climb well above that. So I'm not sure if there's going to be any guarantees with the subdivision agreement that says those will be the final prices of the cell units, or if they're going to be allowed to climb further than that. I have a feeling what's going to happen, being the location close to the beach, that they're going to be snapped up by investors. In fact, the developer has a promotional video that promotes first right to buy to anybody who invests in the property. So my question is, how will this deliver on affordable housing? We also sent in a letter, which I'm sure you have and you've had a chance to read. There's some issues regarding traffic flowing onto Getty Street. The corner of Getty's and Market Street is a very dangerous corner. Getty's is only 7 meters wide as opposed to the 8-meter standard. So there's some issues that need to be looked at there as well. And then the character of the neighborhood, as far as dropping in R4 into a primarily R1 residential area. I'm not sure it's fitting with the houses and the neighbors that have existed here for years. So those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you permit me, Marcel, I think a lot of those questions are good for our consultant, or not ours, the proponent and the town's county planner to consider for their report either tomorrow or over the next little while. So on my list, I have Howard Wrightson. I think he's online. If he's brought over, he can provide his comments or questions. We'll give him a minute to set up, and I think as usual, the reminder to unmute. Excuse me, I struggle to remember that, so I kindly remind. There you go, Mr. Wrightson.
Hi. Anyway, thank you for opening the meeting up. Anyway, one of my two biggest concerns is we're lot 37, we're lot 37. So in some of the comments in the planning report, it talks about having a buffer zone. Lot 37, it sort of looks like we got about 3 feet to the edge of the road. I know it's not called a road, it's a driveway, but it's a road. And if you think we got 117 units, some of those people will have 2 cars. And if they leave twice a day, all of a sudden we end up with 500 trips past our property within 3 feet of our property line. I'm wondering what the buffer zone is, or what buffering we're going to obtain under that. And that's, and I am concerned about the traffic on Getty Street, just based on the fact that it is narrower than a standard road. Anyway, if you got any.
Well, I'll take that question. I don't have an answer. Is the answer? I've made a note because the implementation and the specific ways in which we can try to buffer, or not try to buffer, because that'll be a requirement. The driveway access and abutting properties is going to have to be provided, and we don't have the details of this, so I can ensure we'll provide an answer, and throughout this process we can outline what we're thinking when you have that question.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that's sort of it for me.
Jay, you're on mute, just so you're aware.
Thank you, Brett. And Julie did it all without me needing to talk. So there you go. Thank you, Ms. Sherwood. There you go.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. We live on Market Street, directly across from the forested area. One of our main concerns is increased traffic. Over the years, we've expressed our concerns to the mayor, his department, and the police about this traffic situation and close calls between vehicular traffic and pedestrians. To date, nothing has been done. Market Street is a collector road for vehicular traffic, including heavy equipment, and there's lots, RVs, and large trucks towing boats to the harbor, who routinely exceed the non-posted speed limit, which we assume is 40 kilometers an hour. Our children and grandchildren play in this area, and the new waterfront development will attract additional traffic, further compounding these hazards. So I do have a few questions, kept me off when my time limit's done. For the developer, what criteria has the developer used to justify the following statements? The new street will integrate well with the road system. There is very good access to the collector road, and it is in the best interest of the public. That's my first question. So, do you want me to continue with my other questions?
Yeah, I'd recommend continuing with the questions because as we've emphasized a few times, we may not have answers this evening, and but we want to make sure if there is an easy answer, certainly an answer, but if it's not so straightforward, maybe, but Ron or Randy or whoever on the proponent side may want to respond. Randy, I appreciate you jumping in, but I prefer Ms. Sherwood complete her comments and then you can follow up.
Okay, our second big concern is the compatibility with the existing neighborhood. I'd like to know if there will be any rooftop patios and or utility equipment on top of the apartment buildings. And if so, does that not in essence make these 5-story buildings? Has this been factored into the height restrictions and appearance of the buildings and what we can see from the street? That's my second question. Shall I keep going? Oh, okay. Is there or will there be a mock-up or a model of the completed building site? Because for the life of me, I just can't see how that's all going to fit nicely into that area. And number 4, I know SVCA has pretty much signed off on this, but since that time, many residents have come up with a lot more concerns regarding wildlife, climate change, environmental issues. Are they going to get this correspondence or be made aware of the remarks regarding this development, or have they pretty much washed their hands of it now? Because I think it's important they know that our concerns as well.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just going to ask if that was the last one. Go ahead.
This is the last one, promise. Okay. So part of the sales pitch to build apartment buildings is the inclusion of affordable housing units. And what assurances are there that the affordable income units will be made available to residents requiring affordable housing versus investors looking to rent them on a short-term basis, i.e. cottage season, Airbnb, or to flip? Are any of these units pre-sold? Those are our concerns, and I thank you for the opportunity to present those.
Okay, Randy, you were going to come in and answer one or more of those questions potentially?
Sure, yes, I was just going to comment on the first one that in regards to the road, there's no road anymore. So that doesn't.
Oh, no. Sorry, on the road?
Yes, you had a question about the road fitting with the traffic in your first question.
Okay, so I'm assuming that's a driveway now then, so I'm not sure how that integrates well with Geddes Street, that's all. Unless I got it wrong.
That'll be addressed at the public meeting.
Okay. Good enough, thank you.
Any other responses if there's something the proponents wish to provide? I do want to comment on SVCA's further participation. Yes, they are asked to participate further when new information is provided. So those comments, as they're part of the record, I'll confer with Dan Kingsbury about how to share them with the peer review role for the SVCA.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I just had one more quick thing. Is what the time frame is going to be for building this development if it's approved? So I don't know, is it years?
Their proponent, Brett Nodwell's turned on his camera. Perhaps he's answering that question, or are there other questions maybe?
It was actually pertaining to the affordable housing questions earlier.
Okay, well, I mean, then provide how you'd like to respond to that.
Sure. So Randy and I actually work quite closely with Habitat for Humanity and some of their projects. and we've raised capital for them. So, we have a very soft spot in our heart for what the need is out there for housing and that sort of thing. So we build these units to really attempt to take the pressure off at the lower end of the market, to allow people that need 1 or 2 bedroom units or even 3 bedroom units, an entry point into the market. In terms of pricing, we offer them at market price, and just by the method by which that they're built together, it can jump up. We can't control what's sold beyond what we offer, but we have not pre-sold any of these as of yet. We're waiting for council's remarks back on what they want to see ultimately.
Thank you.
Yeah, but in terms of the carbon aspect of it, and that's been brought up a few different times. So Kingwell Fine Homes that is built for us in the past, their focus is on smart, healthy, and sustainable homes. So all of the homes that we've built, all the single family homes that we've built to date, have been either net zero or net zero ready. With our, with solar, we have a house on Market Street already that we built and closed on last year. And you can see that it's got the full solar array, and it generates as much energy as it actually consumes.
Okay, well, I will take it on that other questions you've asked will be answered other than tonight. Thank you very much, Ms. Sherwood. I will ask for William White to provide his comments. If his audio equipment has been addressed, we can have him participate. Linda?
And we were able to bring him over, and I'm just seeing if Mr. White can hear us. If you can, just the microphone's in the bottom left-hand corner. And I'll try to allow him to speak as well. Mr. White, I think, could you say a few words, see if we can test your microphone? Okay.
I will like to say, Mr. White, if we can't get the audio, we'll maybe bring you back a little later to try again. But that sounds right there.
That's good.
Okay, sorry about that. Sorry about the confusion. Thank you, Jay and Daniel, for the opportunity to speak. I assume that I sent in about 17 questions, and I hope you have them. And it is not my purpose to go through all those 17 questions here. I think the previous presenters have adequately talked about the public safety margins on the Getty Street and the concerns about the development of the density of the development. My comments are more regarding the environmental impacts and the impacts on climate change. So I can go through the questions one by one if you want, or let's just start off.
Yeah, it's up to you. We'll see how far we can get. I do say that we still have a few speakers after. We're at the 6 o'clock hour, so be mindful of that if you can. As I said,
Okay.
If your comments aren't addressed tonight, there's other opportunities throughout the process.
Got it. So the one area, the environmental impact. So we're talking about this subject lands just part of or adjacent to the ancient glacier bluff. And Mr. Davison adequately described what that meant. I lived there for about 40 years, right in the corner, the north and the east corner of the subject property. And I experienced over those 40 years, a significant amount of change in the stability of the steep slope, the saturation of the soils, and the debris that comes down through the water course, either through from the seeps or the natural heritage features and from the groundwater management system of Port Elgin. And there's been a significant increase in tree mortality. And that's really where my concern is. I'm a believer that forest, the trees are as strong as the collective forest. And once you start taking a number of the trees down, it's going to become a very, very weak area. And many of those trees are going to fall down on their own accord. So my first question is, has there been hydrological testing done on the subject lands? And if not, why not?
Well, let's roll with it. I know I said to Ms. Sherwood we'd wait till the end, but let's see if there's an opportunity to answer this now, then if it's straightforward enough. Well, Mr. White, well, Ron, if you have an answer.
Yeah, I'm wondering if this is where John Slocum, the civil engineer, wants to chime in.
I guess I'm not entirely clear on what hydrological testing is being questioned here. We've done a surface water management review of how this development might be serviced through the storm sewer system and whatnot. Clearly, there's groundwater a situation there, the seeps at the toe of a bluff that's pretty consistent all along that shore feature throughout Port Elgin. So I think it's known where the groundwater table is. There's been some subsurface investigations, the soil and groundwater conditions through the phased environmental site assessment. But yeah, some work has been done to that regard.
Okay. My back on.
Sorry,
So
I was
can you-
muted. Mr. White, go ahead.
All right. Okay. Can you hear me fine?
I can hear you well, yes.
Okay, good. The next one is, why is the 15-meter setback proposed by the environmental impact study not extended along the eastern boundary all the way to the northern boundary of the property?
And like me, Ron, you'll have to unmute.
John Martin, would you care to respond to that, Mr. White's question?
Yes, the 15-meter setback kind of follows right along the base of the glacial bluff. It covers about 95% of the length. It doesn't go all the way to the north boundary. I'm not 100% confirmed on this, but I believe there's some kind of right-of-way that had to be dealt with for Nodule Park that's further to the east. So that's why the buffer zone on the site plan doesn't show that, but it still is part of the forest preservation land. So when you look at the site plan, you'll see that there's still a forested section there. Hopefully that answers his question.
Mr. White, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it doesn't, and I don't think that's accurate, but I'm not going to debate that. There is, I know the answer to that question, and that certainly isn't the correct answer.
Okay.
Why is the developer not accurately documenting the extent of the heritage features on the site plan? There's been a request over the past 3 years. 3 times, the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority has asked for clarification of why it's inaccurate, and there's been no response. At least I have been made aware that that's being satisfied.
Oh, any answer?
Yeah, John, can you, Martin, can you try to answer that, please?
Could I get Wayne just to reiterate what the question was again? I'm getting some flap on this side.
Mr. White, I'll have to ask you to repeat it.
Okay. The extent of the natural heritage features, the actual seats, they are understated. And the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority has asked you to clarify that and make it accurate. And it's not accurate. I've walked the hill for 40 years, and there is seeps going north along that bluff that are not documented.
I'm not sure what you're talking about with the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authorities. They were also on site, and they concurred with the mapping. maybe you're referring to that there's more than 4 seeps that there are more. I don't know. I've mapped them. Yes, they could be off a couple of meters, and we recognize that. That's why the buffer zone is established, and even the tree retention zone goes even further. But when you say inaccurate, I'm not sure what you're referring to. Is there more than 4 seeps? Do you think there's, or more on the land? I'm not too sure where you're going.
Mr. White, can you do a follow-up question on email to me on that? And perhaps you and I can chat and how to provide the questions to the proponent to properly answer that. Is that okay? All right.
That's fair enough with me. It's in the correspondence from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority to you. Every time they've written to you and the proponent, it's been in there. So,
okay, well,
yeah.
we'll certainly try to address it more directly. So,
is it possible to get the field measurements that you use to determine where the seeps were, so that we can see where the setback has been created, so that you're meeting the statutory requirements?
If you look at, I don't know whether if Jay can call it up or not. I think it was on drawing number 3 of the site plan. It does show when Gansby Manor or GM Blue Plan was dealing with it. You'll see right along the eastern side, that was surveyed in for the site seep features. And that was looked at by the conservation authorities, and that was addressed. So when you keep saying it's been ignored, it hasn't been ignored. It's been addressed. It might have been ignored a few years ago, but there's been a lot of correspondence over the years, and that's put in it. And you even see the line of the seep. Those are the areas that came very close to the property line, and that's what we used in regards to the 15-meter setback. And the conservation authorities have reviewed that and accepted it.
Okay. There's no misunderstanding. It's the part that is understated is north on the east side of the boundary to the north, and there's 18 feet that's not being set back, and there is seeps there. That's my only point.
okay, well, I guess go on from there if we can.
Okay.
There's still 3 or 4 people to come. So, Mr. White, just politely reminding here.
Okay. One of the significant ones, when I take a look at your site plan, and the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority asked you to have the catchment area for the water course at the natural inlet. When I take a look at your site drawings, I can't see where you could put a catchment area in there, that there's absolutely no infrastructure in the 30% setback or the 15-meter setback. I don't see how you can do it because you need to slope the lands for a catchment zone to work, because there's debris that comes down there. And then when there's the intermittent flash floods that come through from the Pond A of the Saugeen Shores water treatment, or not the water treatment, but the stormwater management system, the stream flows like the mighty Saugeen at freshet time. It's significant. So there needs to be quite a infrastructure for a catchment area, and I just don't see where you have the room to do it with your preservation plan.
Okay, we'll have to make note of that as well.
So when you do that, when we do have these flash floods, and they do happen, then water will become trapped in the groundwater and result in what the trees you are leaving standing will die as well, because of the trapped water and the moisture that gets released from the town pond, basically. So there's just so many issues that I see that need to be answered before you move forward with regards to the water management system, with regards to your plan, your tree plan, and the 30%. And basically, I guess my last question in this area is, we have a plan, we had a playbook, and now we're changing it to use something similar to the special policy area number 4. And I watched the Saugeen Shores Environmental Steward Ad Hoc Committee talk and the recommendations that were received by Town Council this Monday. And it just seems like, is there an oversight with a lens that's looking at the environment in this regard? I don't see it. And I believe that the complex that we're asking us to look at is not limited, it's not constrained development, it is massive. So those are my comments in that area. So with regards to climate, sorry.
No, thank you. I was going to say, we do have your email as well. Do you have additional comments that you'd like to provide at this time?
I have a lot of questions.
Well, if I may, Mr. White, if there are questions, do you think that is an easier way to answer them directly, succinctly through written correspondence? Is that
that's fine.
Appropriate? Okay,
that's fine. That's fine with me.
And if you have any other, I'm just conscious there's other people that are hoping to speak.
I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. White. On the list, I have Adrian Mason as well, can we bring her over, and you may go ahead.
Great, thank you very much. I have 2 comments and questions. The first one has been discussed quite a bit already about the official town plan amendment that would change the 4 hectare significant woodlot limit, which stated that it could not be developed to something that could be developed. So I think that that's a convenient change to a statement that our planning document has held up for a long time. There was a reason that 4 hectare significant woodland limitation was made, and I think it should be evaluated not just for the sake of one development. So the second part of my comment and question that was submitted is regarding the location in proximity to the Nodwell Park archaeological site. So the historical plaque that is in Nodwell Park still mentions the Iroquois or Haudenosaunee village, which was written about in the 1974 archaeological report, which does document human remains being found in the longhouses in Nodwell Park. So just in case anyone is unaware, this is directly above the Nipissing Bluff to the proposed development site. So further research has been done since 1974, and the longhouses were a particular style of building that was shared between Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe cultural groups. So the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, their ancestors were the inhabitants of the Nodwell village site. And their report, which was released and is available online in 2011 from the Environment Office, specifically about conducting archaeology in the traditional territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. They have specific recommendations that I quoted in my letter I submitted. And they do mention that stage 3 and stage 4 archaeological assessments should be considered when human remains are known to be in proximity to the proposed development, as well as significant woodland period Aboriginal sites, which this does fall underneath, and specifically where old sand dunes are present. So the surface level test pitting done in the stage 2 archaeological assessment wouldn't reach the depth of the artifacts laid down in the 13 and 1400s. So when significant excavation for foundations will be done, it's quite likely there could be more artifacts revealed. So with the relationship between Saugeen Shores and Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, I think this should be considered in more detail. Thank you.
Ron, can you address the archaeological matters directly?
Yes, and very quickly here I will. Thanks, Adrian, for that. Yeah, everybody takes that very seriously, and that's not lip service. Randy Von Haking was speaking with Saugeen Ojibwe Nations either today or yesterday. They will be revisiting the archaeological aspect of what work has been conducted, and they will be directly involved. So I appreciate those comments.
Okay, thanks.
So I was just going to add further to that. We are in direct correspondence with Saugeen Ojibwe First Nation, and they're going to be doing peer reviews of the majority of the aspects of the development, and we're going to work together with them to ensure that they're satisfied with everything going forward.
Great, thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Next I have is Penny Inkster, and Linda, if Penny is, well, there she is. If you you can go ahead. Thank you very much. And,
thank you for the opportunity to speak publicly regarding the development of the Market Street Forest. The concern I raised today is water. The town is aware of the water difficulties caused when houses were built at the top of Lord Elgin. On Market Street, the house adjacent to the subject property required the town to divert water into a storm sewer. It runs 24/7, 365 days a year. You just have to stand by the grate to hear it. Saugeen Township and Cake Construction became aware of the underground river crossing McVicker at 105 when sewers were installed. Did you know before builders excavate flat, sandy land on the old Beaner tobacco farm, they pump water out of the ground for days? When they do that, the sand points below the hill run dry. Why? Because that water naturally flows underground on its way to the lake. The top of the hill is where the lake level used to be. Below the hill is cobble, round beach rocks surrounded by swamp muck. When cobble is excavated, it collapses the area around it. I suggest excavation will disturb underground waterways. They'll bubble up and it will undermine the steep slope below Nodwell Park. To gain access to Market Street at Brook Lane, the ground level will have to be raised significantly. This will kill even more trees. Numbers to be aware of, as the subject land is not flat like the paper it's drawn on. Sea level at Nodwell Park is 195 meters. At Market and Alma Streets, it's 183 meters, a 12-meter or 40-foot drop. At Harbor Street, it is 178 meters, an additional 5-meter or 16.5-foot drop. Over 25 years ago at a master plan meeting, I asked for sidewalks on both sides of all new municipal streets. The expert explained hard surfaces like concrete sidewalks reduce the ability of the land to absorb rainwater and cause flooding. When the proposed buildings, parking, and roadways, or driveways if you prefer, cover the subject land, Mother Nature will not be able to absorb and filter that water. Where do you think that rainwater will end up every time we have heavy rainfall or another Tornado Tuesday? Flooding downhill properties, including parkland, around the harbor. After the council has received the environmental stewardship report on Monday, and with the things I've already mentioned that they know, this town knows better than to approve this development. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you, Penny. We have two more speakers. First is Sandra Mercer. And if I see her name popping up, if she wants to speak, unmute and go ahead. I see it is muted now, but perhaps try again with there. I hear.
I think I've got it unmuted.
It sounds good to me.
Very good. I just have a couple of questions, and thank you for allowing us to be involved in your meeting. You had talked about it being apartment buildings. Now, is it going to be an apartment in the former sense of what an apartment was, or is it going to be a condominium?
I'll ask the proponent. I think he said condominium, for like the units would be for sale. Can you confirm that?
Yes. So an apartment building is a type of structure, like a detached dwelling or a townhouse. So in this case, where you have a building with a number of units in it, it's called an apartment. The form of ownership is a different type of thing. So if they're rentals, it will be a rental apartment. And if they're owned, they will be condominium apartments. You could have condominium townhouses, you could have condominium single family dwellings. So in this case, they will be apartments. And there'll be another process to go through when the buildings be under construction to allow for them to be sold as condominium units. Sandra, does that answer your question?
So you're talking that basically it's going to begin as an apartment building, which will just be a rental unit, but you're going to go through the certificate of title condominium format to make them into condominiums.
No, I wouldn't word it that way. Okay, it's like when we deal with like when you look in a zoning bylaw, it doesn't talk about rental, ownership, condos, freehold, whatever. The structure itself, in the eyes of the building permit and the building code and the zoning bylaw, it's an apartment building. By the time they're occupied, they won't be rentals. They will be condominium units. They will be owned individually.
Okay, and that's really what I needed the clarity on. So then the other question I have, you're talking about the development. You haven't given us a time frame as to when you're hoping to have the development begin, but is it going to be a phased format, or are you planning on creating the whole development in one evacuation of land?
Yeah, and maybe I can turn to Brett or Randy for that.
If given the green light, obviously we want to move forward as quickly as possible. We'd probably start with the single family homes and then work to build in phases the apartment buildings.
Time frame for that. And do you have a time frame?
Yeah, time frame. It's difficult to put that to. Obviously, we're trying to keep with tree management as best we can, and one of the things with that is you can't cut trees during specific times of year, and we want to certainly adhere to that with migratory birds and so forth. Also, depending on what applications have to go up the chain, we're hoping 3 years.
That you would start the process.
No, we'd start the process almost immediately, but these things take time, and our guess is completion in 3 to 3.5 years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Do you have a PIN number that relates to this land?
Well, if that can be shared, we can be able to get that for you. I guess we won't be able to provide that imminently, let's say. So.
Okay.
Really, just
can you send that to me as an email? The PIN number?
Like if I'm allowed to, yes, we can provide that information. I don't know about being able to share it. I don't have it at my fingertips. So.
Thank you. Very good. I'm finished my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we have a few minutes left. We will provide Ashkan Saberi opportunity to provide his comments or questions. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes. Go
Okay. Thanks for your time, obviously, and for slotting me in to ask the questions. Appreciate it. I just wanted to begin with reiterating the congestion issues that several people have already brought up. There's two intersections I'm mostly concerned about. That's the Geddes Market Street and Harbor intersection, and then the Alma, Elgin, and Harbor intersection as well. Those are three-way intersections, and I live in the area, obviously, and I know there's a lot of as traffic builds up, that's an area that can be a big safety risk, and I don't think these two intersections would be able to handle the increased amount of traffic that the apartment buildings would bring. And that's especially important for myself, and I know there's several families in the local area that would agree. We have kids that are growing, and if Market Street becomes busier as it gets busier with this development, we're looking at essentially a main street sort of traffic, and I think zoning to a zone 4 would be sort of unfair and big safety risk. I do agree with the increased amount of housing in terms of apartments. I think that Port Elgin totally needs that for sure. I just think that with respect to how the local community is right now, which is mostly small cottages and lots of wooded areas, I think that the apartment buildings really go against the general aesthetic of the neighborhood. And I know there was previously an issue in Saugeen Shores with lot splitting that causes similar type of rift with a lot of people splitting their lots and making smaller lots in neighborhoods that had larger lots and smaller homes, sort of thing. And then my one question was, is the town at all considering the change.org petition that was raised a couple of years ago? There was well north of 5,000 signatures. The petition was Save the Market Street Forest, and I guess with what I'm trying to refer to is, it's not just the very local people in this neighborhood that enjoy this forest and use it. I mean, my property backs right onto the trail, and I can tell you there's a lot of people that walk their dogs, go take their bikes, go for walks during this pandemic. It's been very, very difficult for everybody. And I can tell you the foot traffic has definitely gone up for sure. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's not just the people who live directly beside this wooded lot that are impacted. I think it's the entire town. And having spoken with a lot of people in town, they love the forest, and I think it would be a shame for it to go the way we're planning. So I think that's mostly all I wanted to touch on. Thank you for your time.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. And thank you to everybody who's provided input this evening. As I mentioned at the opening, this is being recorded. This information will be saved. It'll be available for in the file, and it'll be available for council to see as they are informed of all input that's been provided on these applications. As mentioned by Dan, there is a meeting on February 22nd you're welcome to tune in. We certainly understand if you want to provide your comments independently and directly to council. So if you have that interest, please contact our clerk. Linda can assist you, or her staff can assist you as well. But we're at 6:30, and